Hey, everybody. In this episode, we have Jackie. Jackie comes on the show to tell you everything not to do in your early recovery. She has lived the experiences, and she comes on to share with you what she did that didn't work, and finally, what she did that did work. And we get into Suboxone. We get into relationships in early recovery. We get into Ayahuasca retreats and all these things that just didn't work for her. And it wasn't until she finally found her way into treatment things started to stick. It's really a true transformation. It was an amazing episode. We had a blast doing it. Enjoy the show. Here we are, Real Recovery Talk. I am your host, Tom Conrad. In today's episode, we've got Benjamin B.
What's happening, everyone?
And we got Jackie.
Hi.
First things first, thank you for tuning in on the podcast app, whichever one that you choose to use. And thank you for watching on YouTube. In the end, if you have any comments, questions, or concerns, you can always reach us at info@realrecoverytalk.com. Again, that's info@realrecoverytalk.com. And ultimately, we want to help you turn your mess into your message. Right, Ben?
Yes, sirree.
Right, Jackie?
That's right.
And also go to realrecoverytalk.com/guide. There you're going to get a downloadable PDF. Of course, you have to put your email in because that's why it's there. We want your email address, and it's going to be a free PDF download, 5 steps that you can take to get your loved one the help that they need. Now, disclaimer, we're not going to spam you. You're probably going to get 1 email a week, and it's going to be a recap of the episodes that came out previous and any upcoming stuff that we have rolling out. So make sure you go there, realrecoverytalk.com/guide, and get that. I think that's it for now.
You got that down, man. You're almost on Sal's level.
Maybe. Do you listen to Mind Pump?
No.
It's getting a little ridiculous with the Mind Pump stuff.
Stop talking about it.
Yeah. We'll talk to you after. But it was a podcast Ben and I went on, 3 weeks ago now? Yeah. But you're into health and fitness, so.
Yes. Okay. The one you were telling me about out west?
Yeah, we went to San Jose. Yeah.
Yeah. So episode 2392, in case anybody's wondering. Yeah, it was good.
I'll check it out.
So anyways, we have Jackie here. Jackie, to be totally transparent, I don't know hardly anything about you. But I do know that you work in this space, and we were chatting a little bit before the episode, and it sounds like you got a hell of a story. Ben made this connection, and here we are today. So obviously love talking to females in recovery because we don't do a lot of those. And I think, Ben, we need to do a better job at that. So you need to get on that.
I'll do my best.
Jackie, if you have any, people that you feel have
I have some recommendations.
Yeah.
That's the best way to do it, is to go through other women, because just to call it what it is, like, I'm linked into other men, and there are some women out there that have got a powerful message.
Yeah.
I'm just not like going to women's meetings though, so.
Yeah. So let's start here. Tell us just a little bit about yourself. It's not scripted. We have no agenda here. But tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're from, what your drug addiction was like. And we're only going to spend a few minutes on that, but, because we all got stories. But we obviously want to emphasize a lot of the recovery aspect of it. So we'll go from there.
So grew up in New Jersey, from Lawrenceville, New Jersey, a small town in Mercer County. I was pretty much there my whole life up until high school. I grew up with mom and dad and my sister. My parents got divorced at a young age, and then they got back together. And then when I was like 12 years old and my sister was 7, she was diagnosed with Crohn's disease. So she, was really sick when she was younger. Through her entire life, she was pretty sick with Crohn's, and so she was prescribed these painkillers at a young age by the doctors. So she was addicted pretty early on, and I can just remember, because I had a normal, life for the most part. Like, I played soccer my whole life. I hung out with friends. I had this whole social life. So to me, the pills and her sickness and everything was I tried to distract myself by partying a lot, right? So like for me in high school, it was, drinking on the weekends, hanging out with older people, and drugs didn't really come into the picture until college. I went to community college after high school, played soccer, and that's when I started like partying more, a little bit harder. First experience with opiates was I was 19 years old and I got my wisdom teeth out. And they gave me a bottle of Vicodin, and I think it lasted like a day and a half. And like immediately I was like in love with it. And then it was all out. And I can remember like going back to the dentist and like begging them for more pills and like having this like huge like breakdown in the parking lot. Like I wanted more of it, whatever it was. And I had no like education on it. I didn't really know much about it. I knew my sister was addicted to them, but like at that point, I think that's when like I started to like lose control of it all. And then I started to like buy them on the streets. And, my first treatment was 2007. I came down to Florida. Detox was easy, went to treatment, I was like the community leader, I think I found a boyfriend in treatment, and just kind of like didn't really understand what it took to stay sober. I just thought like, okay, I'm no longer addicted to these pills. Now I'm like myself again. I'm gaining a little bit of weight. And I took the recommendation. I went to sober living, and really I took the recommendation because I had like blown up my life so bad up in Jersey, by like stealing and lying, and like I was like, oh, I'll get away for a little bit. So I stayed down in Delray for about like 9-10 months, met a lot of good people, but didn't do anything. I didn't get a sponsor. I hung out with like people that were drinking or just like going to the beach all day, and ended up relapsing. Went back up to New Jersey, continued to use, and again, like no real consequences at that time. I mean, like there were consequences, like I was like stealing money from my family and like experiencing withdrawal and like lying and like ruining relationships and being a psychopath, you know what I mean? But like it wasn't bad enough for me at that time. So I came back down to Florida, and then I went to treatment, and then I moved and went right back up. So I didn't stay the second time. I moved back up, and I got on Suboxone. So this is like 2009. I got on Suboxone, and I was in this Suboxone trap for like 4.5 years. But I was working in a detox for like continuously for those years, and I was showing up to work. I was like a normal person, I felt like. But
this was in Jersey?
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so, but I still had like all the crazy behaviors, and like I was still like irresponsible and like unable to like truly like have real relationships. I was just going through the motions. And eventually I came to a point where I had lost all this weight from the Suboxone. I had like emotionally, I just like wasn't connected. I was like not in a good place, So I decided to get off of it. And
can I ask how many milligrams you were on?
I was on 8 3 times a day.
All right.
So
is that a lot?
That's the same I was on, and that's what they used to do back in the day. I don't see that happening as often anymore. Now they stick to 16 and below for the most part, but 24 is pretty common when it was newer.
Before we move on, I want to just jump in here. So you bounced back and forth from Florida a couple times, it sounds like, and you would go back to New Jersey. When you would go back to New Jersey, where would you go? Like back to your home with your parents, or?
Yeah, or with a boyfriend.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what was in your parents, looking back on this whole experience, what was going on with your parents in terms of like, did they know what to do, how to handle this, or were they just like, oh, Jackie's coming home from Florida and she's going to be clean and sober?
So like, I was always very manipulative and very, like I do what I want, you know, like I'm going to do what I want and you're not going to tell me no. And I think I've like always been like that, you know, from a young age. So like they would just let me home, you know, or if they didn't, I would go to my ex-boyfriend's house, you know? Yeah,
you always had the resources, it sounds like. Now, and the reason I'm asking this is because we have a fair amount of families that listen to this. And oftentimes they don't know what the right thing to do is. So let me ask you this real quick before we move on. Looking back on that experience and the bouncing back and forth from Florida to New Jersey, going back home, stuff like that, what could your parents have done differently? If anything, you know, given the situation that was there, stuff like that.
So like at different times they would react differently. So like right before I was going to treatment, they wouldn't let me back in the house, you know, or they would stop giving me money, or they would, you know, they just wouldn't allow me to do anything, or they'd turn off my phone, or they, you know, at that point.
So they would throw you out of the house? Like you would come home from New Jersey, they think you're going to do okay. Turns out you don't do okay. Do they say, Jackie, you can't stay here type thing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
And they would turn off your phone and all the stuff. Go ahead.
I want to point something else out too on the other side of this where, you know, parents, a lot of times family, they don't know what to do. But there was something that you said earlier about when you first went to treatment.
Yeah.
And you were like, I guess the best way to explain it is you were naive, even yourself, to what it was going to take to stay sober. You said something along the lines of like, oh, I'm no longer withdrawing. I'm off of these. I'm the old Jackie again, and poof, just going to go back to life. Like,
yeah.
And the whole thing about it is like a lot of times families have this expectation that the addict knows what they need to do. But the reality of the situation is we truly don't know either, especially in the beginning. You have no idea what you don't know.
Right.
You know, and just to be able to understand that part of it, I think is really important for the families, because you probably believed yourself 100. It was your truth.
Yeah.
Like, hey, I'm off of these.
Yeah. And so my parents...
Pull the mic a little bit closer to you.
Can you hear me?
There you go. Good.
My parents treated me and my sister differently, right? Because my sister struggled too for a long time, in and out. I had longer periods of time that I wasn't, you know, in treatment, but they like enabled her, right? Because she was sick, because she also had the Crohn's, she was also, you know, I think it was just harder for them to let go, right? But with me, it was like so easy. You know, I was more like resourceful. I think they were just like, she's going to be okay, you know?
Yeah.
And so, but with my sister, they constantly enabled her and like would take her calls in treatment. You know, she'd be like, this place, you know, this place doesn't have, you know, Tempur-Pedic mattresses and I can't get my bagels every morning, you know? And like, they'd be like, okay, it's time. Like, we'll find another place. You know what I'm saying? Like, just make her happy. Right. And then what's crazy is like years later, after my sister passed, and then I was, you know, at a really, really low bottom, my dad was doing the same stuff, you know, like trying to enable me, but doing that to like help me fight for my life, you know? And so it's tough because I get it. And like parents will do whatever it takes to keep their child alive, especially when they've found them overdosed, when they've, taken them to the ER, have seen them like in active addiction. It's really hard,
Fear is debilitating.
Yes.
Fear drives all shortcomings and all character defects. Point blank, period. Fear is the number one driver. You make a family afraid, and mistakes start happening. Or maybe not even call them mistakes, but they do the best they can.
Well, I mean, I think you can't call them mistakes if you don't know, but once you do know and you continue in that behavior, then I think you could call it a mistake.
True.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I think the best thing, well, for me, like this last time that I got sober, I think that the most important thing was like the separation between my dad and I while I was in treatment. So like I wasn't calling him while I was in treatment. I wasn't asking for this and asking for, vape money or whatever, they do. But I had just let the therapist handle him. When it was time to call my dad, I'd call him, and just like taking that space so that like he could heal too, because I traumatized my father in active addiction this last.
Did he do anything like from his perspective? Has he done anything like as far as a therapist or Al-Anon or anything like that?
No.
No,
my dad is Jewish, so like he definitely went back to like synagogue and like started doing the religious stuff more, but he never did therapy or Al-Anon.
Well, he did something though. At least he got. It sounds like he got reintegrated back into his faith. Maybe brought him closer to God.
Yes.
Okay, so. Let's transition now. You wanted to come off the Suboxone. That's where we left off.
Yeah, I want to ask you about that with the Suboxone. I'm glad you brought this up because something you said jumped out to me, and we talk about this all the time, but the more examples of it we have and people that have been through it, you said something along the lines of you were like emotionally detached. What'd you say exactly?
Yeah. Even spiritually, emotionally, mentally, I was detached.
And life was chaotic, it sounded like.
Yeah.
Is what you were explaining. Even though you were kind of holding a job and can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah. So I also realized that like I was addicted to it, like mentally too, not just like, okay, it's time to 8 o'clock in the morning. Like I like couldn't wait for the next one, like I remember that feeling. But again, by the end of it, I mean, it shut down like everything, I was unable to like connect, right? Like I didn't even go to meetings. I didn't have like a recovery program in my life at the time because I was on subs. I didn't need it. I'm good. Like, so when it was time to come off of it, I did not want to go back to treatment, but like, so how I got, my boyfriend at the time had gone to Peru to get off heroin, and did ayahuasca. And he was like, you need to do this. Like this will get you off. So I ended up going to a retreat center.
Will you tell everyone what ayahuasca is? Because some of our listeners are going to be like, what?
Yeah. So ayahuasca is the strongest hallucinogen really in the world. And the people of South America, they use it as a healing medicine. So people go and do these ceremonies in other countries, and they believe that it's healing. And so like when I went to this retreat center, people were there for all different reasons. There was like 40 people there from all over the world for all different reasons. And this was 10 years ago. So I was the only one there for addiction, that had addiction. Someone was there for like they had just lost their father, right, in a traumatic way. Somebody was there for depression. Somebody else was there to get off seizure medication that they had been on for a long time. So they're there for all different reasons, right? So I was there to get off of the Suboxone, but I brought the Suboxone with me. I was like, I'll just bring a few with me, you know, like just in case I don't feel right.
To.
Yeah. But I didn't get off of it. I had it with me. I like took it throughout my experience there. It like, I didn't get the full experience of the medicine because I was still taking it. And so for me, that was super dark, you know, like you're not supposed to be on anything when you go there.
Did your boyfriend go with you?
Not to the first
Okay.
trip. So then the next trip was, so I get back and I'm like, I didn't get off of it. Like I'm still on like, and at this point I was on like 2 milligrams or something like twice a day. So I like had gone down, but I get back and I'm like, I didn't get off of it. And he's like, okay, we're going to go on a deep jungle experience, to the Amazon. And you're not going to bring it with you. So I didn't bring it with me. We go to Colombia, and we go to about like 5 miles into the jungle, and with a tribe, and we stay in a hut and do ayahuasca ceremonies, you know, like 3 times a week. We were there for about 5 weeks.
What? This is crazy.
Yeah, this is crazy.
And during that experience, I didn't bring the Suboxone with me, so I was dope sick in the jungle.
Oh God, getting chewed up by mosquitoes and
All of it.
almost
Did you
getting
have
eaten by
to-
cannibals.
I mean, I'm assuming you had to pay to go on this retreat.
Yeah. So that trip was actually cheaper than the Ecuador retreat, because the Ecuador retreat was like ran by 2 Americans from California that like it was like a beautiful retreat center. And then I find myself in the middle of the jungle on a hammock.
Oh my gosh.
You know,
Fighting off anacondas.
They call it literally. They call them no-see-ums, right? The
Oh,
mosquitoes.
yeah.
They go through the sleeping bag.
They're the worst.
Tarantulas here, you know, snakes over there, wild horses.
You were there for 5 weeks?
Yeah.
And so you take ayahuasca 3 times a week? And the tribe people are
About
there?
that. Yeah.
What are this is I mean, hey, listen, this is in some people's worlds makes total sense. In
At
mine,
the time at the time it did. At the time it was like, yeah, like screw AA, screw treatment, like this is where the answer is, you know, because that didn't work for me that time. So like let's try something different. You know, and so this was just another like self-seeking, like looking for something else other than the real solution. And so I didn't find God. No, I didn't. I found the devil. I mean, that's truly what happened. Like it was all dark. It wasn't a happy, like fun, amazing, enlightening experience. It was all like scary and dark, and it was awful.
Yeah,
I think the best part of it was like just the experience of like living with the family, and like the children are just like so, you know, innocent, and like it was a really cool experience, you know. But as far as like,
you could say you did it.
So
Yeah.
I mean, you know, did you hang on real quick, Ben?
yeah.
How do you get there? Are you like on some
So-
sort of boat going down?
yeah. So we landed in God, what was that city called? A city in Ecuador. Actually, it was like on the border of Ecuador and Colombia, and we went there and we stayed there overnight in a hostel, and then we got on the boat and went down the river to the jungle on the Colombian side. So it took about 2 hours to get to the actual hut where we were
Okay.
staying.
Go ahead, Ben.
a couple things. I mean, and this is just my experience, so I'm curious your thoughts on this too. I've done a ton of hallucinogens, like all different kinds, you name it. And
Yeah.
now, you know, nowadays they're clinically, you know, the FDA is doing trials with all these different hallucinogens for PTSD, all this different stuff, whether it's MDMA, LSD, ketamine, you name it. And I'm just like, for myself, because I've done all these already, I'm just like, I can't grasp the fact that like that this could work for somebody. because I've met so I've seen you'll see people on YouTube, for instance, that claim they do ayahuasca and then all of a sudden they're clean and sober forever. I have yet to meet somebody in person who can sit in front of me eye to eye and tell me that this was the cure for them. Every single person that I have ever met in person that did ayahuasca or the like. What's the other one? I'm drawing a blank.
Ibogaine.
Ibogaine. Thank you. All told me they relapsed back on opiates. You know, so it's I'm less likely to believe the internet than I am other people and my own experience. I just can't put two and two together that I was always looking for spiritual experiences with all these hallucinogens. What else was why didn't it work then? And why didn't I get sober after the rave? Right. Because it's just, I can't wrap my head around it. And I'm not going to sit here and discredit people that claim that it worked for them. I don't know, but I'm still
skeptical.
Haven't
you seen Homeland?
No.
Oh, well, you got to watch Homeland.
So, sure, it is a spiritual experience, if you want to call it that, because you do go to a really, really, really dark place. You know what I mean? And then you're back, alive again. So somewhere in that there is whoa, that was scary. I'm glad to be alive, but there's no true cure in that. There's no, for me, I came back to the States and I was like, okay, now what? That was really cool. The whole experience, I'm glad I'm off of Suboxone, but I came back and I was like, now what? I didn't know what to do. I had Palo Santo and a sword that the shaman gave me. And I was like, okay, I'll just fight off these evil spirits, and burn this Palo Santo and,
what's Palo Santo?
Yeah, I was going to ask that.
It's a wood. It's like a sage, sage. So Palo Santo is a wood that you burn and it.
So you get off the Suboxone on this trip. You're 5 weeks in the Amazon doing the thing. You come back. You're off subs. You have your Palo Santo in one hand, sword in the other, and you're ready to take on the world.
Yeah, pretty much. So
how long till you picked up again?
So then 2 months later, we go to Costa Rica.
For another one?
Yeah.
Jeez.
We're on a roll here. We're okay, what's
just
next?
Pull the mic a tiny bit closer.
We're okay, what's next?
There you go.
Costa Rica. So we go to Costa Rica for about...
This is the third one.
Yeah.
You did Peru, Ecuador, now...
Ecuador, Colombia, and now we're going to Costa Rica.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Because my boyfriend at the time, the same one, wanted to get off of weed and needed another spiritual experience. So,
wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, we go to Costa Rica and find a medicine man. And instead of ayahuasca, he does the ibogaine. And I was just a observer at that point. I wasn't doing that stuff then, but I was just a helper for the ibogaine ceremony, which also was terrifying to even be an observer of, because all you do is throw up and go to the bathroom and trip. So it's not
very appealing.
Right.
How many of these types of situations have you gone to, or is it just those three?
Just those three.
Okay.
Yeah. So then I came back. We come back from Costa Rica. I broke up with the boyfriend, and I end up working at a treatment center shortly after that. A friend of mine opened up a treatment center up in Philly, and I started working there. And they're like, "What do you want to do? What do you want to do in treatment?" I'd been a tech for 4 years before that, and I was like, "I really want to be a counselor." And they're like, "Okay."
How old are you at this time?
30.
Okay.
Yeah, I turned 30 in the jungle, so I was just about to be 31.
30 in the jungle.
It's a song. It
Yeah.
is. So they're like, "All right, you're gonna be a counselor here. So I am going through getting my CADC certification, which is the certification up in Jersey, and I'm a counselor at a treatment center, and they have me with a caseload and everything. And I was working as a counselor intern at this treatment center for a good year and a half before I relapsed, maybe a little bit less. Anyway, had no program. My whole like job was my recovery. You know, I got back from that trip and never went to a meeting. I was just like engulfed in this job. And I end up relapsing on heroin. And I think at that time it was like starting to be fentanyl. It was just as the changeover happened. And I was getting high as a counselor at the treatment center.
That's brutal.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And how long did you stay out or getting high?
Probably like, I don't really know the exact time, but like it was probably like 2 months or a month.
Yeah.
Like,
so you've had bouts of sobriety over the course of the years.
Yeah.
Whether, let me ask you this. In comparison, 12-step programming or these ayahuasca retreats and the ceremonies and stuff like that, where did you find like the true, this is what I need and this is what I need to do consistently?
At what part of my story, you mean?
Yeah. Yeah, like when did it sink in? Like, okay, ayahuasca, ibogaine, spiritual retreats, all these things. Like,
so a lot of things happened in between like that and like me getting sober. So I went on like a 2-year run. So when I had relapsed the last time, I'd went to treatment down in Florida. And after treatment, I went to a sober living. And I think I was like 3 months sober. And that's when my sister passed away, when I was in that sober living.
And what year was that?
2018.
Okay.
What'd she pass away from?
An overdose.
Overdose.
Yep, fentanyl overdose. She had been clean for like 6 months. And then her boyfriend got out of jail and she went back with him and ended up relapsing. And yeah, he found her in the house.
So it was like a one-time use or like she kind of...
No, I think that they were using probably for like a couple months.
Yeah.
And, like after she had passed, the detective had like told us that he had been to the house multiple times for overdoses between the both of them.
Oh.
So, I mean, she had overdosed in front of me and my father multiple times throughout the years too. So like, she
wasn't anything out of the ordinary.
No.
Mm-mm. And you had 3 months clean at this time.
Yeah.
How'd you handle that?
So I woke up to the news. Like my halfway house manager had woken me up. I wasn't answering my phone. And then, my dad and my cousin were on the phone. And I took the call and my cousin was like, Jacqueline, you need to fly home. Your sister passed away of an overdose last night. So I flew home. And I wasn't strong enough. Like I truly believe that like, Today anything could happen and I'd be okay, you know? But then I knew like I was going to get high. I was going home to get high.
That's the wild thing about addiction. You would think like losing your loved one, you would stay clean. Like I just lost, but, and we see this all the time, literally. So, it's just crazy that addiction brings us that far to where it's like still a solution to that pain when we literally just lost someone. through that. It's just cunning, baffling, powerful. I don't know how else to put it, you know?
Yeah. But, you know, also with no work, you know, I'm still sick. So like I'm pretty much already on the path to relapse.
Did you looking back on it, do you think you used that as maybe an excuse to some degree?
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally. And I'd also tell myself, like, if this happened to me, right, my sister would be doing the same thing. So
you justified it in your head.
I would justify it, you know.
Wow. A lot of times people do that, and it's unfortunate. You know,
But when you're stuck, you're stuck. Like I was already in it. You know what I mean? Like, and so what kept it going was those thoughts.
But some people, sorry, people that don't understand would look at that scenario and say, well, you weren't stuck though. You had 3 months clean. So why would you, if you have 3 months clean, I mean, the three of us sitting here understand what you mean by that. But to somebody that doesn't understand, what does that look like? Like Jackie, you had,
Dad.
You have 3 months clean. Why would you go back to that? What would you say? Like, because you said I didn't do the work. What do you mean?
So I was still like in a relationship with someone who I was using with. Like I didn't have a sponsor. I wasn't working a program. I was simply in that recovery house at the time, pretty much because I had nowhere else to go. You know, so anything could have triggered it.
Yeah.
So, and that was like, I was already.
I want to point this out too, because we do see this quite often. So if any addict alcoholics are listening, it's not uncommon to hear about what your sister did. Like she had 6 months and then boyfriend got out of jail. I can't tell you how often we hear that same story here. I'm waiting for my significant other to get out of jail. And when they get out, it's going to be, you know, fairy tale story, and it doesn't take 24 hours, and they're back to what they were doing.
Yeah.
It's because, I don't know, very, very rarely, I will say it does happen, because I do know stories of people who have gotten better in jail. Like, there's actually quite a few of them I can name, but it's probably not the majority. Like, people tend to stay sick in jail, especially jail, because it's more short-term. Where, like, if someone goes to prison, they have an opportunity to maybe get some sobriety under their belt long term. And jail, though, you know, you're doing a year or less, and generally speaking, you stay sick in jail.
Yeah, and she had done the best she'd ever done while he was in jail, you know. And then years later, that was my story. I would my boyfriend would go into jail, and I would be doing the best I ever did, and same with her, you know. And then once she passed, Scott, her boyfriend, had gotten clean and was doing the best that he had ever done. And then 3 months later, he had ended up relapsing and passing away too.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
To touch on that, we just had Caitlin on the podcast. I didn't listen to it. I wasn't there because it was you, Destiny, and her. But we had that here with her. Did you all talk about that on that episode where her boyfriend was in jail? She was waiting for him to get out. She's, in my opinion, a huge part of her staying clean and sober. Her boyfriend got out. She saw how sick he was and broke it off.
Yeah.
But initially, like her first few months here, she was like waiting for the day for him to get out. And over the course of time, started realizing, I think that was a huge. Did you all touch on that on her episode?
No. I wished we would have. That episode actually came out today. This morning. Episode 409, I think. That she's got a hell of a story. She was living on the streets down here. She came into a 74 pounds. I mean, and now she's got 18 months clean. You can't get her out of the gym. You know, she's going to meetings, got a job, you know, the whole thing. Okay, so there was one other instance before we started recording that you shared that happened to you that was traumatic.
Yeah, in the same like 2 years. So then 2 years later, so after my sister passed, I went on a run, pretty much with my boyfriend, Jesse, at the time, for the next like 2 years, and I was like in and out of treatment detoxes. I'd go in to like, if the money ran out or we had nowhere to go or, to please my dad, whatever the case, but I would leave. I would go in and I would leave. I was at the point where I couldn't even face it. I couldn't face what had happened. I couldn't face like, losing my sister. So I was just in and out of treatment centers for a couple months, and then moved to Naples, Florida for like a year. Continued to use, ended up in Hollywood, Florida, where we were pretty much homeless. So I always had a car at the time, so we would be living out of the car, showering on the beach, getting high. I was like waitressing when I could, stealing money from the restaurant, just like, living like that for like a while. And then he was like, Jesse's like, all right, we're gonna move to Georgia. We're gonna go to Georgia. My dad's in Georgia, his dad. My dad's in Georgia, he has a cabin, and we're gonna go get clean there. So I was like, okay, but I need to go to detox first. I could never kick dope on my own. It put me in a house and not use, I don't know what that is, so I went to detox. He went to Georgia. I get to detox and they're like, my dad and my uncle fly down to Florida and they're like, you're going to New Hampshire for treatment. Meanwhile, my boyfriend's in Georgia. And I'm like, okay. And I'm like, I'm just going to go to treatment and I'll, eventually go back to Georgia. So I go up to New Hampshire to this treatment center. I end up sneaking drugs in with me. I'm there for 2 weeks using in the treatment center. No one knows. And I'm like, I got to get out of here. I need to go to Georgia. So I try an AMA. They're giving me a really hard time trying an AMA, harder than usual in the last 2 years. They get my dad on the phone, and he's crying, and I'm like, I can't not leave, I was powerless over it. I had to leave. I had to go. And so they're like, there's a pandemic going on out there. COVID had just.
Oh, I was wondering where this is going.
They're like, you cannot leave. There's a pandemic. And I was like, I don't care, So I get a flight for $15 from Boston Logan to Atlanta. That's how much flights were when the COVID hit.
$15.
Beginning of 2020.
That's why they're so expensive now. They're making up for lost time. But anyways.
I get on a bus. The bus ride's probably 2 hours to Boston Logan Airport. I Google where to find heroin in Boston.
You Google it? No.
Yes, I did. I got off at the train stop, wherever I was, in Mass Ave. Asked the guy that held the door for me at 7-Eleven. Crossed the street with my Louis Vuitton luggage. Went to go get dope. And went back to Boston Logan, got on the plane, got high the whole way to Georgia. Land in Georgia, and my boyfriend and his dad pick me up from the airport, get in the car, and we drive 2 hours to Blue Ridge, Georgia. Jesse's clean at this point. He's not on anything. He's doing well. He's chopping wood in the mountains, and he's, building furniture, and he's loving life. And here I come, a hot mess, to hop in the car, dope still in my pocket. We head up to the log cabin. So come to find out, the log cabin, his dad was squatting in it, in the cabin. It wasn't his. His dad was squatting in a log cabin that they were staying at. So there was a couch and an air mattress. and a coffee maker and ashtrays all over. I was like, okay, guess this is where I'm residing for a little bit. You know, I knew like there was something in me that was like, what the fuck am I doing? You know what I mean? But then there was something even stronger in me that was like, I'm not leaving. You know, I'm in love with this guy, right? I can't leave him. And that was the story for like, you know, those 3 years. Like it was an unhealthy, like toxic relationship, but also like super powerful, right? So we're in Georgia. We were there from, let's say, March to August of 2020. And slowly but surely, like, we start using, you know, it was harder to find dope up there in the mountains. So we started using crystal meth, which was like another really dark experience. And again, I'm just like there and like I'm telling all my friends and family, like, everything's great. We're in Georgia. You know, look at the stuff we're making. Look at the beautiful, you know, look at the woods. Look at the, you know, the beautiful cabin that we're staying in. You know, like this was my delusion. And so the one night that we found fentanyl, we had used it all night, you know, and basically what happened is I woke up and he didn't, you know, and I had woken up to him overdosed and gone. And in that moment, I was like, I'm so fucked.
And his dad was there too?
Yeah, and his brother. Yeah. I was like, this, like, I am fucked for life. Like, I'm next. And I was okay with that. You know, I called my dad. He put me on a plane that day. You know, with the dog that we got. We got a dog, inactive meth use, Bella, who I still have today.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
Tom
So
loves
me and
dogs.
Bella got on the plane and we headed north. And I wanted to go home mostly because I knew where to get high. You know, like I was done. Like I needed to be in a place where I could find drugs and continue on this path because
It's all that's left.
yeah. And there was no like coming to. There was no coming out of this in my mind at the time. Yeah.
So when did you? When was it? When were you done?
So I was at home for about 4 months living at my dad's house, and it had gotten to the point where it was just like all day, every day, you know, using. And so December of 2020, it was like a random day, and I was like, Dad, I need money, you know? And he's like, I will give you this money, but you need to go to detox tonight, you know? Because like over those 4 months, I was like thinking that like my parents didn't know, you know what I mean? Like I'd go to my mom's house and I'd go to my dad's house and like, just thinking that they didn't know, but like they knew, you know? So when he had like confronted me with it, I was like, okay, you know, like, all right, fine, I'll go tonight, you know? And at that point too, like the two people that I was like selling drugs to, like had gone to detox. So I like knew that there were no resources, you know? So on December 20th, I went into detox and I went in, you know, not thinking that like this was it. But I woke up the next day like, okay, how do I get the fuck out of here? You know, like I didn't want to be there. I fought tooth and nail the entire time I was there. I was in detox res for 35 days.
Down
know,
here?
in New Jersey.
Oh, okay.
Yep, in New Jersey. And so I was 110 pounds. I had infections all over my arms. I ended up going to the ER while I was in detox, coming back, going through precip, going back to the hospital, coming back, and basically trying to leave every single day. You know, like I am not a good client. Like I'm not. Like I am so I resist, I fight, like I will you know, at the time I was just like in so much pain that like there was no hope, I felt like. So I stayed. I ended up there again for like 35 days. And by the end of it, I was like feeling better, you know. It was good. It was a good place because it was all like the women's unit was like locked on the women's unit and the men's unit were down here. And like you didn't really see each other. So you were like with the women the whole time, which was like good for me at the time. And so they were like, all right, you are going to go to PHP to this place, whatever, in Sparta, New Jersey. And I said, yeah, no, I'm not. I know too many people there. And they're like, well, the person said that you saved his life 10 years ago, so he wants to save yours. And I was like, oh, okay, you know? That makes more sense. And I was like, fine, I'll go. So I ended up going to PHP up in Sparta. And did IOP, went to sober living, did the whole thing. I was there for like 6 months. And then when I finished the 6 months, I became a tech and started working there. But when I got to Garden State, I got a sponsor my second week in treatment. I was like, okay, I don't want to talk to any of these people that are in treatment with me. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want to talk to anybody. I just want to focus on what, and like, for some reason, you know, a power greater than myself did that because like I would always go into treatment and like not take it seriously or like become friends with people or like, you know, not truly do any of the work. But this last time I was just at a point where I was pretty much blessed with the gift of desperation, you know? So, yeah, I got a sponsor my second week in treatment and I started working the steps like very quickly. And went to sober living, you know, had my routine schedule. Like Monday nights was my home group. You know, Tuesday night was my women's meeting. Wednesday night was, you know, go to dinner with the girls. And so like I had these like weekly routines that I would do. And then I also I was blessed to get a scholarship through the Heron Project to sober living. And with that, they gave me access to a grief group that I would do weekly. So that really helped also. I had like a life coach through the Harem Project that I would meet with weekly. That really helped. So I had all these different like resources that like I would have never used before, but this time I was just like left with no other option. You know, I was living in a halfway house. Our room was the porch, and it was like an 8x10 room, and it was me and my friend Bree in the room, 2 twin beds, and Bella, and the pit bull. She was allowed to come to the sober living, and I was so grateful to be there. And I was like, I would wake up every day, I remember, just like so grateful, you know. And yeah, and then I became a tech at Garden State and started working there, and then got an opportunity down here in Florida and moved down at about 10 months sober.
Wow.
If anybody doesn't know what the Heron Project is, there's a NBA player played for the Celtics, Chris Herring, and there's a documentary on him. That's how most people know of him. But
30 by 30, right? ESPN.
Is that what it was?
Yeah.
Yeah, but active addiction, playing the NBA, talks about being outside on the corner and literally running through the stadium as the game's starting. Like, very good documentary if you haven't seen it. But yeah, it's helped a lot of people.
Yeah.
A lot of people.
What would you say in terms of the importance of the other girls when you were in that halfway house and like the community aspect? How much of a role did that play in your sobriety?
Oh my God, it was huge. I'm going to be honest with you. I was at a halfway house where it was co-ed. There were guys living upstairs, you know? So like the living room, we all shared, and it was right outside my bedroom, you know? But like all the people there, like none of the guys were creeps. You know what I mean? Like they were all cool, and like everybody got along, you know? It was weird because I don't believe in co-ed sober living, but this is where I was. You know what I mean? I had to make the most of it. It was all a test. You know what I mean? It was all opportunities for growth. That's really, truly what it was. I believe that. But it was important. The community, it was important for me to be around people that had more time than I did. It was important. Like I had no interest in hanging out with people that were like just coming in or like, yeah, I'd help you. I'd give you a ride to a meeting. Come on. But like, I wanted to be around people that were like doing the deal, you know, and like changing their life.
I think that's important. You know, surround yourself with good people. You show me your friends, I'll show you your future. There's a gajillion different taglines for that. But in the end, I think that, you know, another one is you're the average sum of the 5 people you spend the most time with. And I think that's so true, especially when you're getting clean, getting sober. You have to find those people, and don't even waste your time with the people that aren't doing the deal. Like if somebody comes to me and says, Tom, how do I get sober? That would be one of the first things I would say. Go find 5 people that have done it and latch onto them.
And you can tell too, like, I mean, Jackie, we've probably known each other, 2 years? We don't know each other. Like, this is probably the most personal we've ever gotten. Yeah. You know, my first time getting to hear, like, your story, stuff like that. But, like, I know everybody that you know. We know all the same people. And there's no denying that you're surrounded by people with really, really solid sobriety. And I'm not talking, like, a handful. I'm talking, like, 100 people that I know of that you know, and it's just so evident. Like, it's not hard to find those people if that's what you're looking for. Yeah.
So now you have sober living. Let's talk a little bit about that. We only have a few minutes left. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So in January of 2023, we opened Jessica's House, which is a women's house in Boynton Beach. And yeah, it's the best thing ever.
Named after your sister.
Named after my sister, yeah. So it's called Jessica's House at Safe House Sober Living. We have men's houses too, and all the men's houses are named after someone who's passed away. So when I met Nick, and like he had these houses, I thought it was like so amazing that they were all named after someone really important to him, and like there's a whole wall of like the person, there's a huge picture of each person and their name. And, and he's like, I want to open a female house. And I said, let's do it, and it just like happened like that, very organically and like easy. And, then, we put the house together in like a week or so, right before New Year's, and opened January 1st. So, there's 12 beds. The girls, in order to live there, they have to be working a program. They have to go to 5 meetings a week, have a sponsor, work the steps. They have chores in the house. We have meetings at the house, monthly meetings, also weekly meetings. It's a really good community, and I've kept it that way since we opened. You know?
How's it feel looking back on everything you've been through, everything you've gone through to be able to do this for other women?
Yeah, it's amazing.
Is it helping your sobriety?
Yeah, it definitely helps. I think that everything that's happened, I've kind of like just turned it into like what my purpose is. It definitely helps, but I also know, like, for work, like I also do this for work. You know, I'm director of business development at Recreate Behavioral Health Network, and then I have the sober living as well. So it's always constant, you know what I'm saying? Like helping people and doing that. But separate from those things, I have my own recovery. I have a sponsor, you know, who I see weekly or bi-weekly and I talk to often. I have 2 sponsees, you know, so it's separate, you know, so I can't say like it helps my recovery, because what helps my recovery is the work that I do with my sponsor.
I'm so glad you elaborated on that, because I meant to bring it up like a half hour ago, because you talked about when you were working in I guess it was a detox.
Yeah.
Up in Jersey, you said that work was your recovery.
Yes.
Earlier, and that's not the case now.
Right.
You know, and to be honest with you, and I hate saying it, but there are some folks that I know that I'm worried for at times, because they do count their work as their recovery. It becomes and it's really easy to get tricked by that.
Yeah.
It really is. I helped somebody get in a detox today. Like,
yeah. And then they forget about like the work on themselves, you know, and I've done that. Work has been my recovery in the past. A relationship has been my recovery in the past, you know, Suboxone, you know, like whatever it is, I've used it all and none of it worked, you know? So like I can, you know, I can testify to that, that like for me, the solution was in AA and working the steps and doing it all, you know, not just stopping at the 4th step and saying like, I'm good, you know, but really going through the work and then taking someone else through the work.
I'll say this too, like from my experience, because I'll hear people that like watch the podcast, for instance, will get comments. Someone will message me like, oh, you help so many people, blah, 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 blah. But at the end of the day, for me, there's nothing better than helping another man go through 12 steps. Mm-hmm. Like I can get people into detox, get them into treatment, do an intervention, do this, do that. But there's something about working steps with another human being that fills a spiritual bank account more so than anything else. Like that, there's no comparison. Yeah. You know, like I feel lucky to be able to do this for work, and I'd be lying if I say I didn't get some purpose out of it, because I do. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, it's nowhere near voluntarily not getting paid just to carry a message of 12 steps to some, like, you're not getting a paycheck for it.
Yeah.
It's simply...
And that it's so beautiful to see that person start doing it for someone else. You know, like
you're not lying.
Yeah, it's so cool. But also, the company that I work for now is where I got sober, right? So that also is like a huge, you know, is a huge part of my recovery, because I got sober there and they helped save my life. So the fact that I can like help other people and like, you know, work at this place that I strongly believe in, you know, that changed me, somebody who was like hopeless completely, is really cool. You know,
that's awesome.
Yeah, it really is.
Well, you got a heck of a story, Jackie, and I'm glad you got to come on and share it.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Ben, any final thoughts?
No, I just doing this. I actually posted about this yesterday. Did you see my story? Or maybe it was this morning I did, but just something along the lines of like, I feel so fortunate to be able to sit down with people and do this podcast, like with other human beings, get to hear their story, get to connect, and it's inspiring. It really is. Like doing this, like I'm going to walk out of here feeling inspired today. And like how, not that I can't, but like what's a likelihood that I'm going to deviate and be like, all right, I'm going to go pick up some crack fentanyl real quick. You know, like after talking this much recovery, you know, it's hard to, it sets me right for the day.
Yeah.
And I just feel so fortunate to get to hear so many stories. You know, I think that's a beautiful thing about, for me, doing the podcast.
Yeah, I would agree. Well, Jackie, thank you for coming on.
Thanks again.
All right. That is it for this episode of Real Recovery Talk. Thank you for tuning in. In the end, if you have any comments, questions, or concerns, you could always reach us info@realrecoverytalk.com. Again, that's info@realrecoverytalk.com. And ultimately, we want to help you turn your mess into your message. That is it. We will see y'all later.